I want to talk to you a little bit about who North Texas is, our current drought status, in addition to not only our drought issue, but our water supply issue, which can result in the implementation of your drought or water emergency plan as well. The conservation and drought planning, some additional resources, and then I'll be able to open up for any questions you may have. Let me begin with just an overview of who North Texas Municipal Water District is. We were created by the Texas legislation in 1952. Fortunately, back in the late 40s, early 50s, we had some foresighted leadership in 10 of our original member cities. Those communities were relying on well water or groundwater supplies. And as the Corps of Engineers was constructing Lake Lavon, which first and foremost is a flood control reservoir, they formed a group. It was the Tri-County Reservoir Association, went to the state and asked for the creation of the water districts so that we could utilize what was being stored for flood control. We could treat it and deliver it and meet the needs of our communities. Back in 1956, when our plant had been completed and we were delivering our first supply of water, we were delivering to a population of about 32,000 citizens. As you know, this area is a hotbed for growth, and now we deliver water and meet the needs of over 1.6 million people. And through the planning horizon, our population is going to double, almost triple by 2050, 2060. So as forward planning was done to get off of groundwater, bring us onto surface water supplies, we have to continue to work very closely with our member city staff, public works directors, city managers, to ensure that what their projections are for population and water demand match up with how we're moving forward within our water planning horizon. We are governed by a board of directors by membership of our member cities. We do serve customer cities, but they do not have representation on our board of directors, and you can see the different counties that we serve. This mapping shows you the large water providers in the North Texas area. The water district, North Texas Municipal Water District, is shaded in the green, and we're kind of north and east of the Dallas area. I kind of say it's like an upside down L. If you took 635 from where Richardson starts, you go up north and swing around all the way to the east, back down to the Forney, Kaufman area, and then back around Mesquite and Garland. Dallas is sandwiched in the middle in the purple magenta color, and then you have Tarrant Regional Water District to the west of us, and then Upper Trinity is in the hatched area. So we encompass the main water providers in the north central Texas area. We are home to a quarter of the state's population. And so we have a very large economic interest for the state of Texas, and so it's vital that we meet our future water needs and ensure that we extend our supplies during drought, because we are prone to recurring droughts. Our drought of record occurred in 1950 and lasted until 1957. We do operate one of the largest water treatment plants in the state. We have the capability at our facility in Wiley. We have 4 different plants there. We have a total of 770 million gallons that we can treat on a daily basis. However, right now that capacity is reduced because we are implementing or constructing ozonation facilities to meet the new drinking water standards for the trihalomethane new disinfection byproducts rules. So we have about 690 MGD or 680 MGD that we can currently treat at. Our peak demand in 2011 was 582 million gallons in a one-day period. So we were really pushing the pedal to the metal through our plant site. We do operate in Fannin County, Bonham, and we started up a Tawakoni water treatment plant in Terrell. Both of those plants were constructed with ozonation in place to meet the new drinking water standards. The district's water supplies come from multiple sources, just like Dallas Water Utilities or Tarrant Regional Water Districts. We use Lake Lavon as our terminal source, or we consider it our primary source, in that everything else, all of our supplemental water supplies, are transferred via pipeline into Lavon's watershed, and then we can use natural gravity to flow that water into Lavon, where it's removed and treated at our water treatment plant. If we start at the bottom of the map, we have our wetlands project. It is our East Fork raw water supply project. In addition to water treatment, we also provide wastewater treatment. Several of our wastewater plants, the effluent, will ultimately flow to the East Fork of the Trinity. We then recapture 60% of that water effluent that we've introduced into the East Fork of the Trinity River. We remove that, cleanse it through a man-made wetland. Then we transfer it through the red pipeline. It's an 84-inch diameter pipeline up to the northern end of Lavon. It takes they estimate about a year for the water to reach from the northern end of Lavon down to the southern section where our intake structures are located. That gives a good blending time and helps with the quality of the water when it reaches our water treatment plant. We do have a contract in Lake Tawakoni for water supplies that are surplus or not needed at this point with the Sabine River Authority. They actually own the water right, but they're not needing to utilize that water right. So we're purchasing supplies from them right now, and we have a 54-inch diameter pipeline that carries that water into the reuse pipeline, which travels up into Lavon. As I mentioned a minute ago, we did bring online the Tawakoni water treatment plant. It's located in Terrell, and what we'll do there is that raw water line will eventually be converted to a treated water pipeline. We will build some additional raw water pipelines, and we can then service from that Terrell or Tawakoni water treatment plant in Terrell the southern section of our system. Because right now everything is treated in Wiley and then dispersed accordingly. Then moving up, we have Lake Jim Chapman, and we have water supplies that we bring over 40 miles of pipeline. This reservoir has not recovered from the drought that it started in 2010. It has not refilled. The rain inflows have not refilled the reservoir to full conservation level. So Lake Chapman is still in a drought condition. We shared that water supply with four other entities. So we have 5 entities that actually utilize the water from flood storage in Lake Jim Chapman. And let me mention that Lake Jim Chapman took over 30 years through, if you will, the red tape, through the permitting process, the environmental studies, to have that additional supply be approved and actually bring water into the water district to supplement our supplies and meet the other providers' needs as well that utilize that reservoir. Up at the top, we have Lake Texoma, and then we have a 25-mile pipeline that had been used up until 2009. Lake Texoma, that supply is approximately 28% of our total raw water supplies. Lake Lavon makes up 30%, so it's a large component in meeting the needs of our service area. And we've been without that supply since 2009 due to an invasive species, the zebra mussels. I think we all know that the importance, being in the public works industry, how important and vital water supply is. We have to have it first and foremost for the public health and sanitation and our firefighting capabilities. It is the driver for any city in order to either sustain their current growth, for the economic development guys to be able to bring new corporate business into our communities. Our state depends on it, and of course every Texan depends on it. And I can't stress how vital it is and how we need to, within our own departments, within our city staff, and then reaching out to our end user, the consumers, how important and vital a role it is as public works directors to convey this message to all of the departments that we work with within our city. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. Some of the state impacts, these are the economic losses that occurred during 2011. In 2011, it was the driest year that Texas had experienced. And the state water plan, we had a large water session in legislation at the legislators level this year. And it's passed to fund the state water plan, but it's going to go to the voters this next November. So we really need to stress how important it is that Texas actually fund from that rainy day bank of money these future water plans so that we can meet the needs of our future generations. We've done such a good job planning since the drought of the 50s. We've all been accustomed to not having too many hardships as it relates to water. I wasn't born during the 50s. I don't know what those hardships were, as some of our more senior staff members or our elders that we can visit with. They understand the value of water a lot more, in my personal opinion, than my generation does, because we've not had those hardships to deal with. I think they're coming around because we have reoccurring droughts, and if we have some long delays, like another 30 years before a reservoir or another water supply can come online, then you as public works directors will have a very hard task in managing those water supplies and meeting the needs in the communities we serve. But the economic losses associated with the drought in 2011, it could grow $116 billion annually without funding of that state water plan. And I don't think any of us want to have a piece of that deficit fall within our community. The impacts to this is just the North Texas area alone. This was provided to us by Texas Water Smart, the Texas Water Smart Coalition, which are the stakeholders. It's the business industries that rely on water. It's your Home Depot. It's your Texas nursery and landscapers. It's the nursery growers and the tree growers. And what they reported to us in our member cities is that 15.5 billion, they have a 15.5 billion economic impact in Texas. 2.5 of that is in the Dallas Metroplex alone. They employ over 32,000 people in the Dallas metropolitan area. And without conservation, without the water supply, drought could cause thousands of jobs and remove millions from that economic engine that we rely on. So this shows you how important from a stakeholder's or an industry's perspective it is to ensure that we can extend our supplies during drought conditions, because this sector alone would suffer tremendously. Coming back to water supply and update, there are two factors that actually affect your water supply in surface water supplies. That is the meteorological drought, the agricultural drought, and then the hydrological drought. The only one that's really not communicated in the news media these days by the weatherman is the hydrological drought. They tend to go by the Palmer Index, which also encompasses the soil moisture or the agricultural issues. And as we all know, a reservoir by definition is not considered full unless it's at its top of its conservation pool level. For example, at Lavon, that is at 492 feet above mean sea level. You go a couple of weeks without any rain and you fall below 492, you're technically in a drought condition. You get a good rainfall, you get some inflow, you're back up to 492, or you may even bump up into the flood pool. But we're prone to recurring droughts, and over this last year we've had below average rainfall months after months after months. Now we've received 3.61 inches of rain at Lake Lavon this month, but we've really, at the end of the day, starting from May 1st through that fluctuation to today, we've only increased in elevation less than a half of a foot. So you've got a lot of factors of evaporative losses that take into account. We lost 2 feet just this month alone in evaporative losses. So hydrological drought is very important. But you couple that, we have really a bad scenario for those that are served by the North Texas Municipal Water District, in that we start off with 28% less of our water supply because we cannot access the Lake Texoma supply due to the zebra mussels. We follow the Drought Monitor. We did have some improvement due to some of the recent rain events and some of the scattered rain events and showers that we had over the spring. Last summer, basically all of the state of Texas was in red or extreme drought. We're really not sure. We're kind of in a band of I don't know in the north central Texas area. Are we going to get a little bit more of the rain and have above average rainfall? Or are we going to go towards the more average, below average rainfall, drier than normal summer? But we as a water provider have to plan for the worst of the scenarios. So we're not going to bank that we're going to get all of that rain inflow that we're wanting, but that it's going to be another dry summer. The outlook, this just shows how it is across the United States. You can see that the majority of the bad drought is through the Midwest section of the United States. And this shows you the band of droughts ongoing, but there is some improvement because we have those scattered showers. Not sure if all that red's going to move in as the summer moves on. They say that you will receive below or about average rainfall, but average rainfall in June and July is what? An inch or less. I mean, it's not much that's going to have any inflow into our reservoirs. These are our current levels of our supplies. Texoma is at the bottom. It's in bold yellow because we cannot access that supply. Tawakoni is 8%. That's the contract with the Sabine River Authority. Lake Jim Chapman is 15%, and Lavon is 30%. And you can see that we're 8 to 8.5 feet down in two of our reservoirs and almost 6 feet down in Lake Tawakoni. It gives you the Corps of Engineers storage level and then what our storage capacity is based on our water right or our ability to utilize that supply. So basically this is telling us that we're starting off June, July, August, and September. And for y'all as utility members, what months are those? Peak summer months. So that's when we have our highest use of demand. Coupled with drought, 28% less water, not a good forecast. If we have less supply, what are we going to do with our demand? We have to rein it in some manner so we implement our drought contingency or water emergency response plan. Wanted to share with you just some photos. We've learned that for general public, they like the aha factor. They really don't get it unless they see it. This is a topographical map of Lake Lavon in 2004, which is considered full. This is what our reservoir looked like in the drought between 05 and 07, which was in 06, which is the lowest level that it had gotten. So if you take a look at trying to explain to the public why they need to water only once per week or twice per week, I think this picture alone shows them there is a dire need to extend our supplies to meet our needs. And so it's imperative that we improve our water use and not waste our water supplies. This is the current reservoir as it was in 2011. And then we were getting some new photos. The aerials are being flown this past week, so hopefully we'll have some updated aerials for 2012. Talk a little bit about the zebra mussels. First of all, if you're not familiar with that issue, a zebra mussel is invasive to the United States. It originated in Russia and was carried over via a boat or tanker ship into the Great Lakes area. For a water provider, really, it doesn't change the water quality for us to treat and deliver. It's a maintenance issue. These large mussels that you see, they're not any bigger than the nail on my pinky, but the adults attach to any hard surface. So they can ultimately build on top of each other and clog our intakes or our piping system to transfer the water. So we will have to put maintenance and an O&M practice in place to keep our lines clean, to keep the intakes clean. A reservoir, on the other for a reservoir and environmental impact, they actually act as a natural filter. So they feed off the small phytoplankton. So ultimately, you can have an effect on the aquatic food chain. So Texoma has a large striper industry. Depending on how much and what the population is and how fast they grow, will ultimately affect, will it eat away the food chain to where you will no longer have that good striping industry, which is an economic engine for that Lake Texoma area. You can see this is the map that shows the identification of the zebra mussels across the United States. Centrally located in the Great Lakes area, and it's moving down through the Trinity River. And Lake Texoma was the first reservoir in the state to have zebra mussels identified. They have since been identified in Lake Ray Roberts, and some DNA has been identified through the Texas Parks and Wildlife and the USGS service in Lake Bridgeport, and I believe there's one or two others. Just because there's the DNA present doesn't mean that they've colonized at this point. That just means there's been some DNA, and they can't determine if it's live DNA or if it's a dead DNA. So we'll have to wait and see if that population starts to occur in some of those other reservoirs. What happened to us, though, is that they were identified in Lake Texoma. Because the reservoir was full in Lake Lavon, we were no longer pumping water, so we had stopped our pumps in July. Then they identified a zebra mussel, an adult, in Sister Grove Creek, which is the tributary that we use to transfer the water from Texoma. We use it by natural gravity to pull into Lavon. The Corps of Engineers and other entities, basically the Corps, told us we would not be able to turn our pumps back on due to the environmental issues. They have the possibility to revoke our 404 permit because of that environmental issue, so we've kept our pumps off since that time. We worked with numerous experts in the area trying to determine, do we use chemicals, do we use filters, what is our option to actually bring that supply back online? When you're dealing with intakes in water, you can't really apply chemicals because you affect the rest of the aquatic life. In fact, the Texas Parks and Wildlife Service tried with sodium chloride to treat Sister Grove Creek twice with sodium chloride at concentration levels that would not be harmful to any other aquatic life, but they were unable to eradicate the few zebra mussels that they had found there in Sister Grove Creek. Then we found out that the pump station that we actually had built in Texas back in the 70s, our executive director at the time was insistent that it was built in the Texas boundaries. It was deeded and recorded in Grayson County. Actually had been moved into the state of Oklahoma. There was a Texas-Oklahoma Red River Compact, and Congress wanted to better define the state line that was in Lake Texoma. I am not a survey person. I know how large this building is off the cliff. It's like a hotel, basically. And somebody connected the dots, and I would say didn't go out and do a field survey because they would have known that if they connected the dots, it would have bisecting our pump station, which doesn't seem to be too big of an issue except for you have what's called the Lacey Act. There's a federal law that prohibits you from transferring invasive species across state lines. We only have one pump in the state of Texas at this point. Keep in mind, we didn't know we'd been moved, so we've got 2 pumps that are bisected in 2 by the state line, and then the remaining 3 are in Oklahoma. We actually had to have an act of Congress. People say, well, that's going to take an act of Congress to get that fixed. Literally, it took an act of Congress. We had to file a bill. It had to go through the House. It had to go through the Senate. And it did get passed, and then Obama actually signed off on that exception to the Lacey Act. What that means is we are going to construct a pipeline to keep that Texoma water in a closed facility once it leaves Texoma, and we'll transfer it all the way to our water treatment plant in Wiley. So that transfer of water we wouldn't be in violation because we're keeping the environment safe, but we're moving it in with pumps that are actually in another state. So that's good. What we've got to go back and we're working on now is we actually had a bill in the House. It was House Bill 3212 to actually correct that state line issue. Here it is. I'm sorry, I went the wrong direction. It has passed the House. It's currently in the Senate. When I was developing the presentation, it was still on the Senate side. They do anticipate this to go through, but then again, it's going to have to go to Oklahoma for their approval to start the Red River Commission so we can reconvene everybody and draw a new state line. I say they just kind of give us a grandfather and kind of move around our building, but I didn't think people will work that simple. It'll go to Oklahoma. If they'll agree with us, then it's going to have to go and have an act of Congress to actually be approved. So our Texoma pipeline, in order to restore that supply, and one thing we're having to struggle with from a PR effort is that when we say we're bringing these supplies back online, they think it's a new source of water. All we're doing is actually restoring what we haven't had. The red line indicates the line you saw earlier, which is a 25-mile pipeline. We're going to connect where the green and the red unite. We're going to build 46 miles of pipeline to transfer that water all the way to our water treatment plant in Wiley. We anticipate that this project will be online. The construction will be complete at the end of this year, and then we can add that supply back online at the beginning of next year. So we're really looking at this summer being the critical issue for our cities to operate with. The upper portion of the pipeline was already in our capital plan. We have a reservoir in Fannin County. You can see it at the very top. It's the Lower Bodart Creek Reservoir. Texoma water supply is so high in TDS that you have to blend it with other natural sources for quality for treatment. But as we bring that pipeline around, it'll give us some redundancy in our system and connect to our Jim Chapman water supply and our reuse and our Tawakoni supply. We don't have that interconnection right now, so ultimately it will provide us redundancy in the system. It brings the supply back online. Not only does it take care of the invasive species, the zebra mussels, but if there was another zebra mussels like the quagga or giant salvinia or some of these other that come in, then we would be protected from the transfer of water and protecting the environment as well. These are just some of the enhancements or the project goals. And it talks really about the quantity of water as it's connecting and giving us redundancy within our system. In addition to meeting our water supply needs, we've had to look towards a cooperation and regional partnership with the City of Dallas. They have water supplies that we can move through our system from Lake Tawakoni and Lake Fork. So we have contracted with the City of Dallas for up to 60 million gallons of water a day. The contract is for a 3-year term, and we had delayed the purchase of this water as long as we could because we didn't want to enter that contract until we absolutely needed to start moving that water. We started moving on May 14th, so we've been moving water for about, almost 2 weeks now. This project alone will add about 6 cents per 1,000 gallons to our water rate. It is a $6 million commitment to purchase from the City of Dallas. We don't have to purchase at 60 million gallons. We can purchase 20, 40, 60, and that can fluctuate. So there are some technical terms within that supply. One key thing in this contract is the importance of water conservation and the prudence of our cities to prove up their conservation efforts in using water wisely and efficiently. That ultimately would fall back on our public works directors, their water educators, and the others that you work with to implement water reduction strategies. There's a lot of different, if you've not been through it, please visit with some of our guys that have, because there's a lot of different departments you have to work with to get the ultimate goal of reducing your water use. From a public perspective, we have to educate our consumers. The district was the first in the state to implement the Water IQ Know Your Water awareness education campaign. Whether you use Water IQ or you have your own water efficient or awareness program, I would encourage you to actually fund that campaign, fund that project within your budget. Without an awareness campaign and reaching those end users, you're not going to have the success that you are actually working for. Your end consumers have to know the importance. One, they have to know their source of water to understand what's happening. And two, they have to know how that relates to them as a consumer within your city. So I encourage you, start with a water educator, fund a program, and really get it rolling out within your community. When you go into water conservation or drought restrictions, the first thing you want to hit, especially during the peak summer months, is your outdoor watering. That is where the largest use of water is going and the largest waste of water. The Texas Water Development Board cites that about 50% of the water that we use outdoors is wasted. And if we know that it doubles or triples our delivery within our system during the peak summer months, imagine how much that's being wasted. So we really got to do a better job. This information is provided from the city of Frisco. In 2006, they implemented a weather station, and then rain gauges within the 4 quadrants of their city so that they could obtain the real weather data. How much did you actually need to supplement your landscape this week based on the 1.5 inches of rainfall that we received last week? They would then sign up for an email, and you would get an email notification that based on the 1.6 inches we received last week, you don't need to water this week. Turn your system off. What they found in 2011 is that this is the driest year on record. 33 weeks out of the year, you did not need to use a potable water supply on your landscape. You were given enough naturally. What did we do with our parks departments? Was our park still watering during those 33 weeks? So we have responsibility within our city as well. If they're a playing field, that's a different issue because you have some safety hazards. But you have to look internally as well. What did our irrigation system be set on? What was it set on? Only 8 weeks out of the year did you need to water once per week, and then twice per week for the other recommendations. And these were the actual weeks that you actually needed to water once per week or twice per week. And each of their recommendations, it was less than 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch. So the rule of thumb, if you're on a twice per week schedule of 1/2 inch or less, is about 1 inch a week. That's the rule of thumb. I got such good feedback when I would give presentations, and I saw some of y'all in the audience go like this because you saw that 33 weeks, and I could feel the wheels turning of, oh my gosh, I probably watered a lot more than I needed to. The district actually has started and expanded on that program. It is called watermyyard.org, and we partnered with AgriLife Extension Service. We purchased 7 of the weather stations. It cost me about $45,000. To me, that's not much money. My finance department thinks it's a lot of money. But what I will get from it, from my efforts and my goal of reducing consumption and having people water correctly, I didn't think that was long-term too much to spend because I'll get a long feedback from that. We partnered with AgriLife because they already have an ET network system set up in the state that does the same exact thing. I wanted to enhance their system because they did not take into account rainfall. They would give you a recommendation, but it didn't tell you how long to run your system. It just said you need to supplement 1/2 inch, but if you got rain, then it didn't tell you how to adjust it. So I call it blonde proofing the system. These are our weather stations. We're located in Wiley. I can click on this weather station that's sponsored by the district, and then it pulls up a screen like this, and you can pick if you have a rotor, a drip, or if you have spray. And most women or men, some men know, but some they don't know the terms, but they know it by the look. Or does it go? It's a rotor, or if it goes, it would be your spray. The next screen, it actually, it doesn't show, but it will give you an option if you actually know what type of irrigation head you have, or it has the I don't know button to it. I don't know what I have. I know I want to do better. And it will give you an actual run time. It'll say you need 1/2 inch, and it'll give you a run time. And I'll show you the email I got this morning. This is where you sign up for your email. And then this is the email I got this past Monday morning. Based on last week's weather, and it gives you the day, and it gives you the information from the weather site there in Wiley. It tells me if I'm on a once per week watering irrigation cycle, I didn't have to water at all. If I'm on a twice per week schedule, I don't need to water at all. If I needed to water, it would have told me 5 minutes for twice per week, so I know that I need to do a 5-minute twice per week cycle. I don't know about you, but that's not worth my effort to go out and turn the system on. But the point is, we overwater our landscapes, and if we know that that's where our waste of water is going, or our overuse of water, this is another tool in the toolbox that you can utilize. We're hoping to expand, let me go back, this map, because right now I can't include Frisco's irrigation system on there because, well, I guess it actually is listed there near the colony. The one for Richardson is not listed because it's an AgriLife sponsored weather station. And so we're working in cohorts with AgriLife to get this updated. So ultimately, Tarrant Regional's weather station will be on there. When Dallas implements their weather stations, then all we have is one URL, one map that everybody can go to sign up to be more efficient with their landscaping. So what can you do with Public Works to extend your water supplies? As I said earlier, you need to strengthen your program, strengthen your landscape ordinances. If you get the efficiencies in place at your ordinance level, when your homes or your businesses are being constructed, you'll get a better reduction in your water use versus having to go back and ask somebody to rehab the next time they do some amendments to their building or their landscape. Work with those that work in the building codes or actually write those ordinances, and then also strengthen your conservation plan. The conservation plan is different than your drought plan. Conservation is what you need to do day in and day out. Your drought or your emergency plan is going to have a beginning and an end. Conservation never ends. So you want to make that as strong as possible, because if your consumers are used to the conservation side being very strong, it's not too hard for them to take one more extra step with their outdoor irrigation. Coordinate with all the departments. If you're trying to reduce water, what's that going to do to the budget? Finance has got to have a role in this to figure out how you're going to deal with that offset of revenue coming into your system. Work with your operations department. It's very key how you're going to set up that watering. You know, can you go once per week by zip code? Is it by zone? Is it by trash day? You have to look at your system. And encourage within your building, the city has to set the example. Use your drought tolerant or Texas native plants and the efficiencies wherever you can within your own facilities. Within your own rehabs that you're doing at any of your facilities, and please keep in mind your parks departments, because those are all vital areas, and the public sees more so what the public parks department does than any other department in the city. And the consumers look for the city staff or the parks department, if you will, to follow what the guidelines are as well. So with that, I'll be happy to open up to any questions that you may have.